Hello, I'm David D. Cosmo, and this is Preview, a public affairs presentation of Electric City Television. We continue to broadcast from home, our guest joining us by way of computer video link. Before the virus pandemic, one of the biggest problems facing our area was that of addiction. Martin Hanna has been dealing with that problem for many years. His daughter, Sammy, lost her life to addiction, and since then, he has been doing everything he can to try to cut down on the problem in our area. He joins us today to talk about addiction in the face of the virus. Martin, you are now with a group called Lakeside NEPA, which strives to deal with those facing addiction. Want to talk about that, but before I do, I'd like to ask a general question about how has the virus pandemic hit folks who are already suffering from an addiction problem?
Well, that's a really good question, Dave. I think it's one of those issues that we deal with that in the beginning was invisible. Much like the virus, it doesn't discriminate, obviously, and wherever it sees an opening or an opportunity, as any disease does, it takes advantage of that opportunity and that opening. And for the recovering community, one of the biggest components to remain clean and sober from alcohol or drugs is a fellowship, an intimacy between one alcoholic to another. And with the restrictions on social gatherings, it hinders that. And so up until very recently, there has been maybe one or two meeting places where there has still been some gatherings. But because of the fear that this pandemic has, infused into the community, a lot of people aren't going to them, and so they find themselves alone and isolated. And we know that one of the similarities between the alcoholics and the homeless community is a lack of support and connection. That's something that we've always known. And so when you remove the connection to that support, their chances at remaining sober decreased dramatically. I have personally seen in the past few months scores of people who have had long-term sobriety succumb to the misconception that they can drink normally again. And so they find themselves in the same choppy waters of active alcoholism, trying to find their way back out of it.
So actually, the gathering really enforces and reinforces their determination to stop, and when they lose the camaraderie of the others, they may turn back to alcohol as a companion, as it were.
Yes, so one of the main things that I personally, belonging to a 12-step program myself, one of the things that I get when I go to those meetings is I get the support and how to navigate the encouragement to do so through whatever life situation I'm experiencing without resorting back to the drugs or the alcohol as an escape. And also what I get when I go there is if somebody is coming back off of a relapse and they're talking about the hopeless state of mind, the desperation and the despair that they're feeling, it reminds me of where I came from and reinforces in me that I don't want to go back there. And without that connection, without that support, we don't get the encouragement that you can get through this without drinking or using. We also don't hear those stories of the people who go out and how bad it still is. And also we don't hear too often of the people who go out and don't make it back. Without saying any names, earlier this morning I received a phone call from somebody who was sober for a few years, and she had reached out. She was struggling, and she had found herself, they had found her unresponsive to an overdose. Also, people that are coming out of treatment One of the most important things when they come out of treatment is to get plugged into a healthy, steady routine of people who are in recovery. And with the social distancing and the lack of the meetings that aren't taking place, they don't have that. So they're coming out of treatment, and it's just like they're going back home. And the thought process in people in early recovery isn't quite as logical or as responsible as those who don't suffer. And so it really puts them at a huge disadvantage. But there are some things that we're trying to work out to help overcome or push down some of those hurdles that we're seeing.
I suggested when I opened the program that the virus pandemic has sort of forced the addiction problem to the back page. And actually, it was better when you were getting a lot of attention.
And you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that, alcoholism and drug addiction has evolved. It's evolved to where it's no longer just, teenage kids having a couple beers after the football game and maybe smoking a joint with their buddies. These kids, these teenagers, these children, the drugs that they're experimenting with become instantly fatal. And so we don't have the luxury, if you will, that we had in the past, where we can watch their warnings and symptoms and things like that and simply say, well, you know what, they're just experimenting. Well, it may be true, but unfortunately what they're experimenting with, they may not have an opportunity to rebound. And so it's important to kind of keep it at the forefront, because as that's evolved, the recovering community, I believe, also evolved too. I think that the recovering community has responded well to be less ashamed, less embarrassed, and more proud of their recovery. And, so I commend the recovering community. There are a lot of Zoom meetings out there. If anybody in the audience is listening and they're struggling, there are treatment facilities and resources available. Here at Lakeside NEPA, we are, the new kid on the block. We're excited to be another resource in the community, just maybe another option. And I would encourage them to go to Zoom meetings, go online. Facebook has AA Zoom meeting list all over the place. You simply download the Zoom app, enter the code, and there is some type of support. The only thing that I fear is that the Zoom meetings can give you the support. However, the intimacy of face-to-face, it brings another component. When there's 25 faces on a Zoom meeting, you may not want to air out some of those personal, intimate things that you're going through. And the in-person meetings and groups and one-on-ones provide a component that they can't. When the meeting is over with and it's an in-person meeting, I could tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, Dave, do you got a minute? I really want to get this off my chest. And that's really where we believe that the healing begins, is that intimate honesty with one human being to another.
As you just said, Lakeside is a new treatment facility. How did it come into being?
Well, a couple of local investors recognize a need for it. I think that with the overwhelming response to the opioid epidemic, the outpatient and the inpatient treatment facilities were getting flooded. They were booking patients and clients sometimes 2 weeks out just to do an assessment or an intake. And sometimes, as I know from personal experience, we don't have 2 weeks. We have to strike while the iron's hot, because our minds will change our minds. We'll talk to a child today, and he's willing to do whatever it is that he needs to do to get and remain sober. However, 2 weeks later, his life situation may have changed and altered a little bit, and he may not be so willing, and so we may lose him. And unfortunately, to lose him to treatment could potentially mean to lose him fatally. And we want to make sure that we provide as many resources in our community as possible, so that when anyone reaches out, there is a hand out there that can be receptive in that. And so we initially had some plans and some ideas of different services that we can offer. We also had some restrictions on us of what we couldn't offer at that time. And so, what fell in line was an outpatient treatment provider. So with the leadership of Dick Conboy, who was the CEO, and also he was the vice president of Clearbrook Treatment Facilities in Wilkes-Barre for 20 plus years, and in recovery over 35 years of continuous recovery himself, as well as our clinical director, Amy Talipsky, who has more than a dozen years working with those who other people may say are hopeless cases. We don't believe that any case is hopeless. So under her clinical direction and Richard Conboy's leadership, we're really optimistic that we'll be able to provide an ethical and transparent service for the community.
Is the addiction problem primarily in young people right now, Marty, or is the age just spread the gamut?
Well, I really believe that it does spread the gamut. I think that, primarily the people who are seeking treatment and seem to be a little bit more motivated, and of course this is just my personal opinion, seem to hover between the 30s and the 40-year range, in their 30s and 40s. I think they have, much as I did, they had beaten themselves up enough to where they finally had decided, I just want a little bit more out of life, or maybe they've taken an honest assessment of where they are in their life today and decided they weren't happy with where they were and they wanted to make some changes. And however, we do get some kids in here, I say kids, but in their 20s, and we're optimistic for them too, because the truth is provided that they're willing to come and take some simple directions and be honest, maybe we could help put a treatment plan together for them that would help them to live up to all the promise, that they're capable of living up to.
Before the virus hit, I know you were on your own, going into the field looking for those in the homeless community that faced addiction. Were those efforts cut completely?
No, absolutely not. As a matter of fact, the owners of Lakeside NEPA insist on my continued efforts in the community. We will continue to help the homeless community. We will continue to help those less fortunate. Lakeside NEPA, we do accept any forms of Medicaid right now. As a matter of fact, we have a 24-hour hotline that I man, and we're very, very proud of the fact that even though right now we're not at an inpatient facility, we do not turn anybody away. If anybody is in need or guidance and direction to get into a treatment facility for Medicaid, like a medical detox and residential, we will work effortlessly to make sure that happens and make sure that we get them placed through the proper channels and to the level of care that they need.
I know that I've touched base with a couple other agencies that try to do what they can to help those facing addiction problems, or even if it's just homeless problems, as it were. Are you trying to coordinate efforts with these other agencies to make sure that as many people as possible can be served?
Absolutely. We work very closely with a variety of treatment facilities in the area, as well as facilities on the other side of the state. We have a very diverse resource list. We work with places such as the Keystone Mission, who may see somebody who's struggling, that's homeless, that has no insurance, no information. We work with Barbara Durkin and the Lackawanna Susquehanna County Drug and Alcohol very closely. They help us immensely. We really recognize that we are just one piece to the puzzle, and we're just grateful and humbled that they would allow us to continue to help people. There's really no other greater reward than to see somebody come in one day and you almost don't recognize them because they had gotten their weight back, and they have, gotten back into their families' lives and the lives of society, and really recreated who it was they were. And we will work with any different treatment facility, physician, and any outreach organization, and try to collaborate and play whatever part we can in helping somebody better their lives.
I would think that some people who might want to seek help could be reluctant because of the fear it's going to cost them money which they don't have.
Right, and the truth is we work with people with, I always had, in the Forever Sammy Foundation, we have always had a philosophy: good insurance, bad insurance, no insurance, that doesn't matter, they matter. And so we would be, we will take anybody's phone call, we will take anybody's walk-in at our facility, and we will find out, what insurance they have, and we will try to co-align them with, if they need inpatient treatment, which treatment facility accepts that. And if they have no insurance at all, we will help collaborate a plan to help secure a bed at a facility and funding for them, even if they have no insurance at all. So it really has nothing to do with, money. They don't have to worry about having money or insurance initially to come in with us. We're very optimistic that because of the broad spectrum of resources that we work with, we can secure those things and help them get a bed in the quickest fashion possible. I know that we pride ourselves in expediting beds and treatment for those who may otherwise call and hit some stumbling blocks and some obstacles to where they say, you have to wait a couple of weeks. We're very optimistic that within a few short days at the most, they will be in the level of care that they need.
Well, there are efforts being made, certainly here in Pennsylvania, to, if you will, open things up again. When will that happen in terms of your ability to do inpatient?
Well, we actually do in-person groups now. So we have clients that come to our facility now. Obviously, we ask all clients that come in during this pandemic to wear masks, be considerate of the social distancing with one another, be sure to wash their hands. And after each group, our facility is completely sanitized, all the chairs and everything wiped down a few times a day. And so we do that now. But once the pandemic kind of lifts a little bit, we do believe that we will get a greater influx, because we do get some people that call in and they have some fears, and obviously, some healthy fears if they have a lower immune system, if you will. They are a little concerned about coming in and doing some groups, but we still do, try to keep in touch with them. We try to reach out to them. We let them know that they can call us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in the event that, they have some cravings or some temptations. And one of our representatives will be more than happy to take the time out to speak to them and kind of talk them off the ledge and remind them of, the journey that they're on. There's not a destination to it. It's a day-by-day walk.
Right now, then, the telephone communication is your best lifeline to these folks who are seeking help.
It is actually, as I had spoken earlier. Right now, it's everything is new. Although we're the new kids on the block, and we seem to have hit every stumbling block we could to get off the ground. One of the things that I find gratitude and solace in is knowing this, is that everybody is experiencing and having to figure out and navigate new ways on how to continue to reach those in the community who are struggling. Because the truth of the matter is the people that are struggling with substance use disorder, their primary concern is not coronavirus. And not to say that's not dangerous, not to say that people shouldn't be cautious of that, but their primary focus is getting the next one. And we need to treat that. We need to continue to treat that in the most effective way possible. And so we're doing everything that we can from our end to encourage people to continue to come out, to continue to, in a safe manner, reach out and get the treatment that they seek.
Martin, one of the biggest problems facing an agency like Lakeside or the Mission, several other organizations, as they have come into being to try to fight the addiction problem or the homeless problem or both, you wind up getting that old thing where people will say, we hope these people get care, but not in my backyard. We don't want it next door. Is there any lessening of that attitude at all?
Well, I think that initially when we had made the proposal to open up this facility to help those that are struggling, obviously the neighbors had some fears and some apprehensions, and I'm sure many still do. And so we understand that as a facility that we're going to have a little pushback. The Not in My Backyard, or as is coined, the NIMBY movement, is very real and it's very powerful. And the NIMBY movement is really just a bunch of neighbors in the community who just care about their community, and we understand that, and we do not wish anything other than the fact that once we open, now that we're open, and once they see how ethical and transparent we open, and once they see the level of care and that we're really just a compassionate company that just wants to help somebody, God forbid it would ever be one of their children. And again, we would still graciously and humbly be grateful for the opportunity to serve and perhaps possibly help in that capacity. But I know that one of the statements that I had heard, which kind of was powerful because of my experience in my personal family's life, is if we don't allow them to get treatment in our front yards, then they will die in our backyards. And so, that kind of makes sense to me. And, but we're optimistic that the neighbors will see what it is we're doing. They will see how much we're caring for not just the clients that come in, but the community that we're in. And, this is our backyard too. So we're optimistic that will kind of calm a little bit as we go.
Well, Martin, I thank you so much for spending some time with us today and talking about this serious problem that, again, has taken a back page when it had the front page before the virus. So hopefully, as things open up again, you'll be able to get, you and the other agencies will be able to get moving the way you want to and accomplish the mission that you've set out to accomplish.
Well, Dave, I thank you very much, and Lakeside NEPA thanks you for having us. We know that the relapse and the alcoholic and the drug addict, the rates are going to increase. We're disappointed to hear that the overdoses, they began to level off prior to the pandemic, and they're beginning to spike again. And I just want to let any of your followers and viewers know that if anybody finds themselves in a situation where they need some help, please don't hesitate to call us. And our phone number is very easy to remember. It's just simply 570-344-LAKE, L-A-K-E. And that's 570-344-5253. And we would be more than happy to help in any way we can.
Martin, thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too.
And thank you for joining us here on Preview. I'm David DeCosmo for Electric City Television. Till we see you again next time, here's hoping all your news is good.